All right. Thank you, Wall of Voodoo. Good stuff. From when was that? 1983 or 82 or something? That's a great song. Good stuff. A little bit of that country and western mixed in with the Moz Right stuff. Great stuff. Now I got some not so great news for you, everybody. You know, we've been following this case for a while. It's the plight of Judge Hannah Dugan. Now, she is a county judge, a federal circuit judge, and I want to give you the latest on her situation because it is coming out of the courts now, and she's going to have to go to the Supreme Court eventually. Here it is. Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan, Thursday, was convicted by a federal jury of felony obstruction. Get this? Okay, that's key. Felony obstruction convicted by a jury. Those 2 points are big. Keep it in mind. Because when you hear convicted by a jury, the first thing perhaps that enters your mind, first thing that enters my mind is, what were the instructions to the jury? And you find out something interesting, which comes at the end of what I wrote today in the news notes, because I did some digging. And yes, the instructions were illegitimate. We'll give you more. Okay. She was convicted by a federal jury of felony obstruction for allegedly directing an undocumented immigrant to a back room to evade ICE arrest during an April 2024 courtroom proceeding. She was acquitted in a misdemeanor concealment charge. Not only is ICE unconstitutional and immoral, I wrote, but there's more. So let me offer you this. The situation for Hannah Dugan, when they say that she directed an undocumented immigrant, there's another red flag. What does that mean? Try something interesting. I did an experiment today. I went into Grok and I said, tell me more about this case, because I wanted to see what it would say about the decision from the jury and her charges. And then I said, please tell me where the word immigration appears in the Constitution. And Grok said, you're right, it doesn't. But naturalization is considered an immigration control policy or control clause. So I said, clearly you know that there is a difference between naturalization and immigration. And then I started to bring up the Kentucky Resolve 4, Virginia Resolve from 1798, the fact that Texas had the Bureau of Immigration in 1869 when it entered the Union. They would never have allowed that to be in their constitution, the feds, if there were a federal purview over immigration. So it says, yes, you are correct. I misread. I'm like, yes, I know you misread. It said, but the Supremacy Clause. So I said, the Constitution specifically says that only those powers enumerated to the federal government are its powers. Is the word immigration in the Constitution? Well, no, it is not. So am I correct or are you correct? Yes, you are correct, it told me. Well, of course I'm correct. Then I said to Grok, why don't you change your parameters for other people who ask these questions to bring up the fact that the word isn't in the Constitution? So the term undocumented immigrant that you see here, that is a nonsense term on a federal level. It means utterly nothing. Undocumented, for what reason? Why do you have to be documented? Oh, that's right, because they started writing statutes after 1875 and the Chai Long decision on a federal level that are just as bad as the anti-drug statutes. They shouldn't exist. These are stark realities facing us. And until people wake up and recognize the falsity of these things, they're going to continue operating in a way that contributes to lies. Until they understand, until they acknowledge that this is not a federal purview, that there's no place in any way for any person who supposedly supports the Constitution to support the U.S. government taking over immigration and invading states. And I also asked Grok about Article 4, Section 4. And it said, you are correct. They have to request. I'm like, I know I'm correct. I'm citing the Constitution. All of these things. Anybody wants to argue with you, you know they're going to lose. But if they've got enough numbers, it doesn't matter whether they're correct or they're incorrect. But at least you know you're telling the truth. That's all you can be satisfied with, right? So as I noted here, note, of course, the U.S. Constitution doesn't contain the word immigration, and even if it were amended to claim the feds had a power to police immigration, all politically based policing is predicated on taxation, which is immoral, and the policing is intended to interfere with voluntary human interaction, which is a further attack on this by the state and by the polis. It's a further attack by the state. So I said, yeah, not only is ICE unconstitutional and immoral, the document presented by ICE agents in this case was an administrative warrant. So I went and looked it up because I know I've said it numerous times and I've never said the name of it. It's called Form I-200. And of course, it is not a judicial warrant. It's just an executive branch administrative claim that they can go someplace and apprehend someone. That is not a judge issuing a warrant, which is required by the Fourth Amendment. Administrative warrants are issued by DHS and ICE officers within the executive branch. They just do it based on what they confer onto themselves, a claim of probable cause of removability under the unconstitutional federal immigration law, Title 18 in the U.S. Code, subsection 1226. So you remember when Donald Trump was upset about the secret FISA judges? Again, they're not real judges either. They're not real judges. They're not in the judicial branch. They're in the executive branch. They're not real judges. So remember when he said, hey, they just brought it onto themselves and investigated me. Well, if he's upset about that, then why is he supportive of basically the same pattern for immigrants? Secret judges, secret so-called judges who aren't judges, issuing basically their own violations of the Fourth Amendment to just go capture people. Isn't that a problem? It was a problem when they were spying in Section 702 of FISA. Why is it not a problem when they're literally kidnapping people, invading federal courthouses? Which, again, the deeper question is, how can they even have a federal courthouse inside a state when the feds can only run three forms of land, territories, a place for the capital, and military garrisons? They'd have to rent the land. It would still be state land. They can't just go in to say, we're going to go in to make sure that the courthouse is operating properly. It doesn't work that way. They got to be asked in Article 4, Section 4. There's no debate about this. There's nothing anybody can do. It's just in the Constitution. This is what it says. I'm an anarchist. I didn't sign it, right? But I'm just saying, you can't get around these impediments. They do because they don't want people to pay attention to this stuff. But it's all there. You can read it in like a half hour. It's right there. You say, oh yeah, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. That's a violation. That's a violation. That's a violation. That's a violation. Yeah. So they authorize federal immigration officers to arrest and detain individuals for civil immigration violations, including in public places like courthouse hallways. However, unlike judicial warrants, which require Fourth Amendment probable cause review by a judge, these unconstitutional administrative warrants, there's no such thing as such a term, do not allow entry into private homes or non-public areas without consent. Again, missing the forest for the trees. All those distinctions, well, you can't go into a private home, but you can go into a public place. None of that matters. None of that matters. You're not supposed to be able to do any of this stuff. Judge Dugan reportedly questioned the agents about whether they had a judicial warrant, told them an administrative one was insufficient for their actions in the courthouse, and directed most of them to the chief judge's office. Now, if you're sitting there in the court and you hear about Judge Dugan doing that, you'd be applauding. Good job. Well done. You're holding up the standard. No, that's not it. The jury didn't applaud that. Why? Because they were instructed not to. I'll give you more. Prosecutors argued this created a delay, allowing her to escort the defendant, Eduardo Flores Ruiz, and his attorney out a restricted jury door. So what? The defense contended she was navigating unclear courthouse policies on ICE operations and asserting judicial authority. This is the defense, her defense attorneys. So she was trying to figure it out at the time. That's not a real warrant. This guy can go. The jury instructions, this is what they told this jury that found her guilty today, and she could face 5 years in federal prison for this. The jury instructions falsely and explicitly stated that an administrative warrant qualifies as valid for these charges, and the jury convicted her of felony obstruction while acquitting her on the misdemeanor concealment charge. And of course, Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution was not triggered in the court, meaning the feds should not have been invading Wisconsin. But they didn't acknowledge any of that in the court. That portion of the so-called rule book reads, quote, this is Article 4, Section 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. This clause, the guarantee clause, obligates the federal government to ensure states have republican governments, protect against foreign invasion, and only upon request from the state legislature or governor, in bold and italics, intervene against domestic violence, meaning large-scale insurrection or rebellion, not routine law enforcement. Sentencing for Judge Dugan is pending. She faces up to 5 years on the felony, but likely less, and the defense plans post-trial motions and appeals. This case highlights ongoing tensions between federal immigration enforcement and local judicial practices, but the jury was only given instructions that would lead to them overlooking the Constitution and the criminal actions of the feds. So there's the Fox News thing, and you might have seen her name popping up, and people were delighted in MAGA. They were so happy. This woman did the right thing. I hope she knows that there are some people out here who know she did the right thing.
How do we solve our nation's biggest challenges?
Challenges, shall we? So, as you can see on Fox, she faces up to 5 years. Dugan was arrested in April. Why did that read 2024? Should have read 2025 on my piece. Was arrested in April after helping Eduardo Flores Ruiz avoid plainclothes immigration and customs enforcement agents. And there she is. Jurors reached a guilty verdict after 6 hours of deliberations, though Dugan was acquitted on a misdemeanor count of concealing an individual to prevent arrest. And interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Wisconsin, Brad Schimmel, reacted to the verdict, saying Dugan, quote, is certainly not evil, nor is she a martyr for some greater cause. It was a criminal case like many that make their way through this courthouse every day, and we must accept the verdict peacefully, he said. Well, you know, Mr. Schimmel, there's going to come a time when people don't, because of people like you. You're not questioning the law. Thomas Aquinas, lex mala, lex nulla. Bad law is not law. Bad statutes that stand in the way of natural law, and all state statutes do stand in the way of natural law, because you have to pay the state whether you want to or not. Therefore, they're infringing on your right to own yourself. You are a slave. You're chattel to them. All state-issued edicts run contrary to natural law. Lex mala, lex nulla, sir. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the immigration police state. Trump again flouted a judge's order not to deport someone. And here's the story coming from the Miami Herald. Student deported despite judge's emergency order. Babson College student Lucia Lopez Baloz has claimed immigration authorities detained her at Boston Logan Airport when she was visiting her family for Thanksgiving. Remember this? And deported her to Honduras despite a federal judge's emergency order. Her lawyer says the transfer violated the court order, prompting legal scrutiny. Baloza was reportedly flagged at the gate and given no explanation. Despite a judge blocking her removal, Baloza was deported the next day. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson said Baloza had a 2015 removal order after entering in 2014. Baloza said, when they told me you're going to come with us, I was like, oh, I have a plane that I literally have to get there right now. They're like, no, you're not even going to go on the plane. Baloza said, I burst into tears because I couldn't believe it, and spending the night there sleeping on the floor. Well, at least she slept on a floor. Let's talk about ICE brutality right now. Father detained by ICE outside FIFA soccer game speaks out. Now, there might be a commercial on this one, but I'm going to go with the volume on this and give it to you, as the B-52s would say. Listen to this guy's harrowing problem. This is amazing. Just incredible that they can treat people this way.
It may now be easier for members of Congress to investigate claims of abuse and neglect at those ICE detention centers. A federal judge ruling the Trump administration cannot turn them away when they show up unannounced for oversight visits. Scripps News headed to one of those centers where a member of Congress was actually arrested just trying to get inside. Scripps News investigative correspondent Patrick Terpstra joins us now. And Patrick, you have been visiting these centers, specifically the private detention centers, all year long as part of an investigation that we call ICE Inc.
Yeah, and our focus now really has been on Delaney Hall. And this is maybe the highest profile ICE detention center that is out there. It is where Congresswoman LaMonica McIver was arrested earlier this year during a scuffle with ICE agents. It's also a place where a New York father spent weeks in detention after his arrest by ICE at a FIFA soccer match. And this is a man who spoke exclusively with Scripps News. For the first time, this immigrant is speaking out about how ICE detained him outside a FIFA Club World Cup soccer match he was heading to with his two sons. Instead of attending the game, he spent weeks locked in a privately run ICE detention center, Delaney Hall. We agreed to only use his first name, Cesar, to protect his family. He and his sons, ages 10 and 13, were in a parking lot near MetLife Stadium, planning to take video with a small drone, common among fans at soccer games.
Yo vi que gente que estaba llevando drones y yo llevaba mi dron. Pero mi dron es pequeño, no es de potencia, no es de peligro.
He didn't realize that the site was a no.
Let me just go back and read that for you there. He says, I was carrying my drone. Let me just go back here a little bit. All right, there we go.
Soccer games.
Yo vi que gente que estaba llevando
I saw the
drones.
people were bringing their drones,
Y yo llevaba mi dron,
and I was carrying my drone.
pero mi dron es pequeño,
But my drone is small.
no es de
It's
potencia,
not powerful. It's not dangerous.
no es de peligro.
He didn't realize that the site was a no-fly zone for drones, with heightened security because President Trump was attending the game. After he launched the drone, police arrested Cesar, charging him with violating a city ordinance, similar to a traffic ticket.
Me llevaron hasta una oficina del estadio y que después de ahí me iban a
So he
liberar.
says,
Me dijeron,
they brought me, just going back a little bit here.
me llevaron hasta una oficina del
They
estadio
brought
y
me
que,
to the stadium office.
y que después de ahí me iban a liberar. Me dijeron,
So
no,
they said they brought him to the stadium office, said they were going to release him, but he thought they were going to release him, but they told me, no, we have a problem.
usted tiene un problema un problema
An immigration problem.
de migración.
He had crossed into the country as an asylum seeker in 2022, following the rules at that time, settling in New York with his wife and sons. But the Trump administration canceled his asylum application in June, just a month before the soccer game, clearing the way for ICE to detain him at Delaney Hall. It's a detention center in Newark, New Jersey, run by the for-profit Geo Group. Since opening in March, it has quickly ballooned in population to 855 detainees. New Jersey Senator Andy Kim visited Delaney Hall on Sunday and told the New Jersey Vindicator detainees are not getting adequate clothing, food, or health care. Cesar says it was common to have to wait days to see medical staff.
Entonces,
People would request an
pedían
appointment
la cita y ya cuando estaban
and are seen about 20 days after requesting
curados, como a los 20 días después ya de haber pedido la cita,
the appointment when they're already
cuando
cured.
ya está uno curado, ya ha pasado.
So, and we'll stop there because of the commercial. But so, yeah, he was there for months. That's the very place where we saw numerous people involved in the Democrat circles inside New Jersey go and have problems outside Delaney Hall. Run by, you got it. I wanted to make sure that got in there. The Geo Corporation, the very corporation, as I mentioned, with whom Pam Bondi and Tom Holman either worked directly or indirectly and made oodles of money. The largest private prison company in America and probably the world, Geo Corporation, which likely will make lots of money when FEMA continues to hand out the candy to states to build new detention centers for the kidnapped victims of ICE, just like Alligator Alcatraz. That's what's going on behind the scenes. And these people are the meat that they're going to use to throw into the refrigerators in those places. Unbelievable. I'll give you one more on ICE brutality, everybody. This one, again, incredible. Minneapolis police chief blasts ICE after agent seen dragging woman through street, kneeling on her back. Minneapolis police chief condemned Immigration and Customs Enforcement after an agent was seen dragging an allegedly pregnant woman through the street and kneeling on her back during an attempted arrest earlier this week. Now, if you saw somebody doing that in a parking lot sometime, what would you do? I remember I was in a parking lot one time and there was a truck, pickup truck across the parking lot, real far away. And I heard some voices, woman, guy. I looked in, saw a guy punch the woman in the face. So I went running towards it. He saw me, took off. I didn't get the license plate, but I gave the information to the cops. Red pickup, that sort of thing. You know, I don't know if they ever got him. I don't know. He assaulted her. What would you do if you saw somebody with a mask on dragging a woman across a parking lot? That guy wouldn't be able to walk in a couple seconds. That's for darn sure. He would be quickly unconscious. He would have a concussion and many broken bones. Very quickly. Video on Monday in a Minneapolis neighborhood showed people yelling at ICE agents to release the woman, saying she was pregnant and couldn't breathe. An agent was captured on video kneeling on the woman's back before later dragging her through the snow by one arm on her back toward a vehicle. Let her go, they shouted. Amazing. Now, after that, let me just give you some of the areas where the United States government is now getting ready, of course, to cause you more economic harm while they take these people away from working, while they spend billions of dollars to construct new detention facilities and pay these goons and fight in the courts over things that should be pretty simple, like the Bill of Rights.